모닝 파워! 모닝 터보!
Good evening and welcome to another day of the Junior SSL Premier League with Valdez and Wolf. We're going to be jumping into another great day of games. I've been seeing some stuff on Twitter and other forums saying, oh my god, the games are so good today. Well guys, the games are good every day. That's the way this format works. And today, we're going to be starting off with Stats versus ByuL. Obviously a huge matchup here.
There's several players that will be potentially moving into playoffs after today's matches, as well as players such as SOS and Zest. Those are the only two actually in this category I'm about to describe that may be knocked into challenge following tonight's broadcast. If they lose their games, they won't even have an opportunity in Fastlane to defend their spot here in Premier. They might just completely be knocked in, and you might not see them play in the SSL until next year.
Yeah, so definitely a lot on the line for some of these guys. And as we are getting down to the last couple of days, this is day 8. Next week will be day 9. And all of our stuff is going to be decided. Who's going into the playoffs here for SSL Premier, who's going to be relegated down to the fast lane, who's going to be falling out. As you were talking about, perhaps it will be SOS and Zest. A couple of Protoss players might be going down. So definitely take a look at that fast lane format too. It's kind of interesting to see like which players are getting through and which players aren't.
Yeah. So it's best if you want to actually follow things. If you haven't been following or watching this and you're watching the GSL and you're watching all the other StarCraft tournaments coming on, you're watching the VSL, you're watching SSL Classic, and you're a little bit confused, your best resource for this really is actually to be Liquipedia. So go check that out. If you go to SSL there, you could follow not only the Premier, but Challenge as well as the Classic tournament that is happening in Brood War on patch 1.8 right now. So a lot of StarCraft happening here on this channel. Be sure to follow the YouTube with the Esports TV, because that's where we broadcast these matches every week, 3 days a week. And it's me and you for Premier, and you and Rapid for Challenge for StarCraft 2, and myself and Rapid bring you guys the Brood War on Thursdays. So just giving you guys the whole laydown, the whole schedule as we go into tonight's matches.
And as I said before, we're going to be starting off with Stats versus ByuL. Definitely one of the better matches tonight. I think the two last matches are going to be ones that are potentially stomps, ending with Zest versus Alive and SOS versus Innovation. Let's go through those matchups right now as we overlook Gangnam down here in downtown Seoul.
That's right. We're starting off with Stats versus ByuL, as you just mentioned. Our second matchup will be between Maru and Patience. Our third matchup of the evening, Solar versus Dark, the Zerg versus Zerg, the SSL rematch of the finals. Then Zest versus Alive. Could be a one-sided one in a live saver. And our last match of the evening will be between SOS and Innovation. Both parents could knock these Protosses into challenge this evening. So definitely keep a close eye on these two, because I know there's a lot of SOS and Zest fans out there, but they might not be going into Premier next season.
Yeah, both of those guys definitely having some trouble. I mean, we remarked on Zest a lot, you know, having to have left KT as the team disbanded. Definitely doesn't have that support system anymore, and SOS not really looking as solid. His games against Dark last week were some of the weirder ones that we've seen here at SSL Premier, but as I said before, you know, those last two matches probably going to be more stompy, but the wins still matter for both Alive and Innovation, especially Alive, because he definitely needs that win to get up in the standings so that he doesn't get relegated down at the fast lane. So here is the rankings so far. Innovation is our #1, but ByuL just behind him right now in 1 set score.
That's right. If Innovation and ByuL do make it through this evening, they will, of course, advance to playoffs. They need 6 wins to make that happen. And you know, for Stats and Dark later on, it's not necessarily guaranteed, especially if Stats loses today. So it'll be a really important match for him to win. You can see Stats actually massively favored in Legacy of the Void, 12-4 in this matchup. The Protoss versus Zerg, he's just looked a lot stronger, especially towards the end of things, but ByuL looks to be getting better and better, and he had a rough start of Legacy of the Void and a tough end to Heart of the Swarm at those 2 defeats in 2 grand finals, the GSL, the SSL. He lost them both, and he's one of the favorites, I'd say, to do well in playoffs in this tournament. Perhaps this is his moment. Here's our second matchup, Maru versus Patience.
Yeah, Maru, the other player from Jin Air that hasn't been showing up all too well, but he's been doing better than SOS for sure. He's sitting at 3 and 4. He's really getting up in the rankings. Definitely still has a chance to even make it into playoffs if some of the other players do bomb out from here in the last 2 days. And Patience, always having that SSL buff, has been looking quite good so far. He's at 4 and 3. Pretty even in terms of where these guys are at. They haven't played all too much over the course of even StarCraft 2 history.
That's right. Patience not really playing Pro League, so that being the key factor there. And SSL results, they both look to be really strong in this matchup. So we're going to jump into our first match here in just a moment. As things are getting heated up here in the arena, fans are shuffling in. Stats, 11 and 8 in this first season. Not doing as well as people expected after his GSL victory. So he's the defending GSL champion. Started things off with a crushing victory when we started off the season, but has not been able to carry that momentum going further into these weeks.
Yeah, definitely wants to win tonight here. Definitely has a hard matchup ahead of him. He could boost himself ahead of ByuL potentially if he does win this matchup, in fact. So that would be pretty huge. As I was talking about with you actually before the broadcast, even the seeding going into playoffs is really important because it's a pennant race. 4th place, 3rd. The winner of that plays against the 2nd place, and the winner of that plays against the 1st place for the finals. So definitely every day, even in terms of set score, really, really matters. You want to take that 2-0.
That's right. So in SSL Classic, since it's all best of ones, that's not really a factor, but in Premier, every single 2-0 you get is so valuable. For ByuL, he would love to take this one 2-0. Many consider him the favorite, actually, in this series based on results so far, despite the fact that Stats did just win the GSL in this very matchup, the PBZ against Sue. So here we go, our maps for this first best of 3. We're going to be Overgrowth, Daybreak, and New Kirk Precinct. So 3 back-to-back 2-player maps, Valdez.
Yeah, both these guys picking the exact same maps, actually, just in different orders. Kind of funny the way that works out, but they've kind of decided which maps they do want to play on. So guys, let's jump into game number 1 right now. Stats versus ByuL on Overgrowth.
Stats, 김대영. ByuL, 한지원.
Fly better fly, Jin Air. Thanks for sponsoring this whole tournament series, SSL Challenge, Premier, and Classic. There's Stats down in the bottom left.
Yep, and his opponent on the opposite side in purple, it is ByuL, his Zerg opponent. This is a map that in the past, ByuL has shown a lot of gold-based strategies. It's mostly in Heart of the Swarm. I don't think we'll be seeing anything crazy like that as an opener. But several Zergs would do this on this map, and Stats will send out an early probe scout to confirm whether ByuL will be doing this or not. So actually, may even get the chance to block this hatchery. Looks like just a little bit too late. Nope, it's going to actually get the probe in just in time if he turns to the left. Oh, mistake there by Stats. Lets the hatch go up. Definitely could have delayed that significantly. When you probe scout like this, you commit a lot of resources to getting some additional information, but if you can see that hatchery going down and block it, it makes the cost actually kind of equalize because ByuL loses a lot of mining that may even have to pool first.
Definitely annoying. It's what Stats wanted with that early scout. You can still identify at least what ByuL is doing, and this matchup is kind of interesting. You know, we touched on how both of these players are up towards the top and are doing very well in SSL Premier so far. Specifically ByuL, you know, really breaking expectations up at 5 and 2. But so far, in terms of his games he's played against Protosses here in SSL Premier, like the Protoss roster here is not all that strong, to be honest. You know, you look at SOS and Zest, they're really down at the bottom. Then Patience was one of those guys that we were actually surprised about. And then obviously Stats is the big Protoss here. But so far, ByuL, he took out both Zest and SOS, but he actually lost to Patience 0-2. And meanwhile, if you look at Stats, every single Zerg here in SSL Premier is really, really strong. Solar, especially against Protoss, is really strong. Dark and ByuL, both really good Zerg players. And the stats, he lost to Solar and Dark, but he took 1-2s. So those are pretty close matchups. The games were very close. So going into this one, if you just want to look at stats, no pun intended, seems to be in a pretty decent spot. But anything can happen in a best of 3 between these really good players.
Definitely true. The meta is pretty stable right now. We were seeing a lot of really unusual commitments to Archon drops. Zest specifically was running basically only the Archon drops. But most Protoss is moving back into the Oracle play now. We're even going to see a Stalker committed here by Stats to ward away the Overlords to try to deny the scouting of said Stargate. But sadly, the Ling will get in. Ooh. No vision here for the Adept to shoot. Even with the probe, it's just out of range. So the Ling will actually confirm the Stargate, which will give ByuL ample time to set up Spore Crawlers at home. And he was even researching Overlord speed. He cancels it immediately. He doesn't need it anymore. He would rather have those resources to build more drones and the extra gas that he'll have to, tech up as well. So good scout here. Unfortunate by Stats. Another uncharacteristic small mistake that leads to a big disastrous situation.
Yeah, 100 gas is really good to have, just back in your pocket. You don't have to commit to it for the Zerg. So you can see those spores coming up. Just one for now. You might decide to hold this with good queen positioning too. But generally, if you want to be super safe, you can put down 2-3 spores. And here comes that first Oracle coming out of the base.
Going to be a Void Ray follow-up as well. Looks like he's actually just going to push these Lings away. No, gonna just take a weird flight path. I was say he's really just kind of giving up on this Oracle. He's gonna attack Lings with it. Just wants to make sure the spores are actually made. You see +1 is coming up behind this. He couldn't cancel the Stalker, so that's still out there to deny the Overlord scouts of the follow-up Void Rays. If he pulls them, that could be quite deadly. He may just use it to clear Overlord scouts anyways. The Overlord is actually coming into the left side of the main base. There's a pile on the spot for this, so he turns it around immediately. See if he actually makes any more Void Rays, or if he's just going to use the one to clear the Overlords. A bunch of Adepts moving across the map for pressure. Meanwhile, it's going to force some Lings out for ByuL.
Yeah, the Baitling Nest is kind of late, to be honest. This isn't that many Adepts, and obviously Resonating Glaives is a long way away. Oh, look at this! Stasis Sword coming down. That's going to deny a lot of mining for a long time. Unfortunately, looks like ByuL wasn't expecting that, was not able to deny.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of talk about this. It's been used in the GSL several times recently, this new Stasis Ward usage over drone killing. Obviously the damage is more severe temporarily with the Stasis Ward, the damage is more permanent with Harass, but we need to realize to put back to mining, and that's what the Observer is actually highlighting here, is you have to really be on top of that, because there's no warning that tells you, hey, your drones are not mining. This time he moves away. Not going to send any units over to deal with these Stasis Wards, though, sadly, and this is going to actually start to really stack up. I feel like there's definitely better ways to deal with this. Obviously, you need vision of the Stasis Ward as it's coming in, or move your queens in. You could kill it while it's being made if you have detection with Zerglings. But either way, this has actually done quite a bit of damage for Stats, who now has freely 3 bases. He did use the Void Ray just to clear off the Overlords. And here's the extra queens I'm talking about. If you have queens here, this is just not going to happen.
You can see the Void Ray widening its way down the map. It looks like it wants to take out some stuff at the watchtowers first, push back some of the Overlords, and it might actually join up with the Oracles over there. Can definitely make fighting just 2 queens a lot easier. So another Ling comes up here, wants to see what's going on. Only just sees the first 5 Adepts, but we do have a lot of gateways powering up. He stayed on a very low probe count for a long time, still at 48 even with that 3rd base. And he's going to have Resonating Glaive, so this is a pretty strong Adept attack that he wants to go for here.
ByuL made a ton of drones too. He was up at nearly 70. He's going to make actually a 4th base while adding these Spine Crawlers right now. The Spine Crawler is going to be very helpful in the defense. Another Stasis Ward attempt here on the edge of the base, trying to trap potentially some queens. Needs to make sure he keeps this Prism alive. He's going to do the long-range pickup here on these Adepts. Well, would have imagined that was going to be the case. Does come in with a Void now.
The Void Ray is kind of late, you know, and I think he may have been able to take that fight with the Void Ray and the Oracles if it happened at the same time. But here we go. This is really the crux. All these Adepts and the big shade into the third base.
Banelings, though. The Banelings were there, and he shaded right into them. There's a lot of Lings coming over to clean this up. There's no shade defensively here. He's going to commit to another Warping in the main base. The Void Ray is here. Queens actually target down the Stasis Ward.
Oh, that Warp Prism, it survives. That's pretty huge at 5 health.
So many Lings coming over here, though, including Banelings. There's not a lot of room to micro. He's going to maybe be able to potentially warp it or pick up some of these, but the majority of these will be cleaned up, and this is looking better and better for ByuL, who still has that fourth base at the top left that's completely uncontested. And, you know, you have to wonder, was his commitment worth it? The idea there with the Void Ray and the Warp Prism in the main base, I suppose, was he was hoping that maybe 2 of those Queens would get hit by the Stasis Ward. He kills the other 2 with the Adepts and the Void Ray, then snowballs this into the main base, but that didn't happen. The Stasis Ward didn't trigger the way that he wanted it to. And he committed so much to the main base, and then that shade into the Banelings was super inefficient.
Yeah. And then the Adepts were attacking the Spine Crawler too. I mean, he wasn't targeting with his Adepts. He didn't really do all that much economic damage. ByuL still has a really healthy drone count here at 63. Stats was able to catch up, but look at the 15 drones that ByuL just made.
Yeah.
That fourth base is going to be instantly up and running.
He also didn't scout whatsoever. He's about to find out. He doesn't even control the watchtower here, but his Lings will probably force some units back. He's about to find out how many units were just made by Stats. He's making 20 Lings right now. He needs more Banelings to hold this. He's going to continue to counterattack and catch reinforcements. We'll grab this Immortal, and so many probes are going to go down. Stats is actually turning around with some of his army, it looks like.
He's hesitating in the middle of the map. He didn't go for the attack right away. And ByuL, he's showing this counterattack style so much recently, against Innovation even in a different matchup, as we saw last week. But what is he going to do here on the defense? I don't really see anything at all. Everything seems to be across the map.
16 Banelings are being morphed right now. I'm not sure where they are. They're back here at behind the mineral line, but there are a few sentries here. If these Banelings do not connect, this could be a really good fight for Stats. There's the force field wall.
He's got to pick him up. There he goes. He's trying to drop him over the force fields, but it's slow Overlords. He gets pretty good hits, though. But it doesn't look like it's enough Banelings to clean this up altogether, but he gets a lot of the sentries.
Yep, going to continue to clear some of these Adepts. Zerglings here coming out. The sentries are starting to fade away. More Queens coming in, and I think this is going to be the end of this push.
Stats doesn't have an economy anymore. Nope. He has 23 probes.
Spine's being moved over from the earlier defense he made. The fourth base was just so much extra production here for ByuL. He's even taking the fifth right now, and I think this is going to be game over as Stats tries one last warp in. The Warp Prism, 9 health.
Those poor 3 Adepts, man. They're not going to live very long. And ByuL, some really nice holds and a very smart play to go for that counterattack, knowing that he could hold off. And with the even cooler drop Overlords to make this work in the defense, targeting those sentries and taking it out. I think Stats just doesn't want to accept it just yet. GG, there we go. ByuL will take game number 1.
And with the hatchery in the main base as well, he had so much extra Zergling production. And I was really afraid for ByuL there when he added those 15 drones, but the counterattack wasn't enough to keep Stats back and prevent some of those warp-ins. He bought a lot of time with that. His Banelings were more from the safe location. And without that Overlord that you mentioned, the drop Overlord, he may not have been able to get the hits he needed to defend, but I feel like the game really went wrong for Stats when he tried to attack with the 2-prong, the Warp Prism, and the Void Ray into the main base. And then the Shade, it looks like he wasn't paying attention to go for the cancel there when the Shade went into the Banelings behind the mineral line. That was basically all she wrote for the push, and ByuL was massively ahead with the fourth base after that point. Stats goes for a follow-up all-in, and it does not work. ByuL has enough time with that counterattack to defend the attack.
Stats saying, oh, you're really good at holding off that push. And ByuL just responding, oh, it was a bit scary. So, I don't know, ByuL looked really strong on that map. I really have to say, I think Stats messed up, as you were mentioning before, but ByuL looking really, really solid. Let's jump into set number 2 here on Daybreak. Go. Another 2-player map, a bit longer this one, Daybreak. And down here in the bottom left, the Protoss player, it is Stats.
He's down 0-1 in this series. His opponent to the top right in purple is ByuL. one win away from qualifying for playoffs. Obviously, his road doesn't end there as he wants to have the best seed possible. A 2-0 would be fantastic, especially against the defending GSL champion here in stats.
Now, I don't really like to point out personal stuff about players, but did you notice that ByuL actually has a little bit more nerdback today? We all kind of have nerdback.
Sure.
All the casters, all the players is kind of an effect of playing a lot of video games. But man, this guy is looking so much better. Maybe he's just practicing so hard that, you know, ByuL's got his wrist thing. Like if you look at his wrist, it's like, oh wow, that's kind of crazy. But ByuL, yeah. I think he's getting a little bit.
Well, you could tell that, nerdback or no, man, his play has been crisp. His defense there was solid. His counterattack style looks to be really powerful too. You know, in the GSL, he's shown a lot of Mutalist play, for example, in the ZVT matchup. Those counterattacks have been working very well for him. And I think this player is in some of his best form right now, even better than when he was on CJ. And we talked about how some of these players, when the Kespa regime, if you will, collapsed for StarCraft 2, there was not the infrastructure for players like Zest to have continual coaching and practice partners. But some players seem to really excel in this environment where the pressure is removed. They're playing less matches. Like, ByuL was playing in Pro League every week, every single week, because CJ needed him. He and Hero were required, and they were hoping that players like Young, before his incident, would help get that third win, but it was always Hero and ByuL that really needed to carry the team. He had these snipe moves like Hush, but now for ByuL, he's just like, okay, I'm only focused on me. This is all about me now. Yeah. It's not about CJ anymore.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, and I think another part of it could be, like, my personal way to look at it would be like, okay, now, you know, players aren't going to have that kind of backing from the teams, and maybe they'll take a break, but instead of doing that, I'm going to use that to practice even more, so I'm even better than all these players that might take a step back, and maybe that's what we're seeing out of players like ByuL. Yeah,
ByuL as well, one of the players that has really shown, I feel like, that sort of boost of practice and preparation. Neeb as well, when he was out here for the Kespa Cup. And these players that kind of seemingly came out of nowhere. Ooh. Nice scout here by ByuL. He's not going to get caught off guard by anything. The Stargate will be placed, of course, in the natural. It's already scouted. And this map is the map we've seen the most Archon drops out of any other map in this tournament so far, but Satch just sticking with his Oracle play. And I think we're probably going to see Stasis Ward harass once again. That seems to be the new way. You know, the Oracle used to have an ability called Entomb when it was first in the beta, which would encapsulate all the minerals with barriers that had to be destroyed before mining could resume.
Yeah.
And it was removed, but the Stasis Ward functions in a really similar way. And it wasn't used like this in competitive play for a long time, but making that return. Meta shifts do happen. And in 2017... here comes
even in 2017, lol.
Meta shifts in 2017?
What year is it? By the way, those Lings at the front, they got a scout on the Stargate. So yes. ByuL, I mean, he is just on top of his scouting here for the Stargates. And so we do not see the Overlord speed once again. I was thinking maybe he would go for it just in case he wants to open up Baneling drops on this map. You were talking about the Archon drops, but Baneling drops also very strong because the bases are very spread out. The main has a direct path through air to just load up very easily and go into the main, but deciding against it, just wants to play straight up and standard, more of a ByuL style. Maybe if we were seeing Dark in this game, he would go for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, concept of differing styles here, but let's see if he commits to trying to kill drones right out, or if he's just going to go for a Stasis Ward again. There's already a second Spore about to finish here. He's going to use these Adepts on the third base at the same time, and it's going to distract ByuL. He's got a second Oracle coming in. Looks like it's going to be Stasis. Immediate pull, going to be just triggered by Lings. He almost actually destroyed it there. So definitely a much better defense here by ByuL this time around than on Overgrowth.
It was just that first Stasis Ward in Game 1 that was like, ooh, that's way too many drones. I think it was like 11 drones that got stopped. But this time, as you said, very good. He's going to come on in here, actually, while that Queen is Stasis and pick up a cheeky 3 drone kills. It looks like he wants more as he heads into the back of the bases.
Yeah, it's going to be the Fallout Void Ray after 2 Oracles this time to push the Overlords away and keep the tech of stats hidden. It was kind of funny that Oracles are always one of the most technical units in StarCraft 2 in terms of micro. You see players like SOS and Hero just dominate with them when they were meta, and then now, this is a ton of links here, but now you could see the change in this micro being used for a different ability completely. See the Fleet Beacon and +1 come up, so it looks like it's going to be carrier tech from stats, but ByuL needs to get wind of this, and it's very difficult to scout without Overlords because the Void Ray is pushing them away.
And without Overlord speed, too. You know, he doesn't need the Overlord speed to get the early scout, but the later scout, the follow-up, as you were mentioning, he will not have any idea. I mean, maybe if he really scours around and notices, hey, there's really not that many gateway units, I wonder why. He must be going for some big tech. Like, why did you only just warp in 3 adepts there when you're already going to 3 bases? Where are your 8 gateways? Well, there's a reason, because he has to commit so much to the carriers. So if the intuition is there from ByuL, perhaps he can get that idea.
I am just loving this harass here. He is finding so many ways, so many avenues. The micro here almost perfect. Did make 2 mistakes there, but StarCraft is hard, so these things can happen. But Spire Tech is coming up right now, and I can give him somewhat of an answer to the carriers, but normally it's been mass Hydras to deal with carrier tech so far. This Overseer will actually be spotted early on by the pylons on the edge of the base. It is theoretically possible that Stats could deny this scout if he's not paying attention. If ByuL's not paying attention and Stats sees this immediately. Let's see, here comes in the Overseer. And the Void Ray is coming, the Void Ray is coming.
But here we go, that's that money scout, sees the carriers on the way. And he already did have the Hydra Den and the Spire on the way, so has lots of different options. And seeing no aggression out of the Protoss, he may have guessed it, but gets that here. Another Stasis Ward coming in at the 3rd base.
It's going to hit the drones and also Larva, which is quite important. We'll stop production temporarily. The Mothership's on the way. Glaives, he's going to mix in obviously a lot of Adepts with this. And Graviton Catapult's about to finish. For those of you who don't know what that even does, it just makes the Interceptors launch faster. It's very critical of an upgrade though. It's like getting Colossi without range. You just need that. He's got everything. 2 carriers already out, 2 more on the way. +1 is finished, +2 is started. It's very intuitive, I think, for ByuL to send that Overseer in the main base, though, knowing, as you said, something is wrong here, something is missing. And what ByuL's goal now is, for the majority of this time, is to try to trade even, take a 5th base, and stop Stats from having a 4th base. And if you can trade even with his Hydras, it's harder for the carriers to be replaced. They take a lot longer to make, they're very expensive, and if he can stay up 2 bases, or even just the 1 base, is pretty decent for now.
Yeah. I just wish he had gone for the 4th base earlier, you know? Maybe he was just scared, because taking a 4th base on this map is not easy. Either you have to take this one that's closer to the Protoss, or you take that 4th base down in the bottom right that's really far away from your main. It really stretches out your bases. So ByuL, he actually went for a macro hatch in the main for extra lings, banelings, and stuff like that, perhaps to hold off an earlier attack that just never came. So he ended up taking a relatively later 4th base, which means that he isn't going to have that gigantic economy that he perhaps could have if he was taking more of a greedy approach. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all turns out at the end of it here. Like, is he going to have the response and the bank to remax against this really scary air toss army?
To rewind back to the beginning of the game too, where Stats threw the exact same opening he did in the previous set. So maybe ByuL was thinking, defensively to play more passively and conservatively, because it could have just been another follow-up warping of Adepts, a big attack into the main base. So that was kind of a mind game by Stats to show the exact same opening and then transition completely differently here. He's only going to get a few drone kills, but still pretty annoying harass. The Shade actually completes, and he's going to get a few more here in the natural. Carrier count is growing, but so is the Hydralisk count. The Hydralisk count more massively ahead. And we'll see if ByuL actually commits to a few Vipers, because that's going to be one way you could just yank the carriers, and it's very difficult with the way that the carriers can be microed, since they've been changed in Legacy of the Void. And
looks like he wants to go for just Hydra Baneling right now. Yeah. He has some lings in. You were talking about the numbers. It's 36 Hydras to 4 carriers right now. Notice also that Stats made 4 Void Rays, which would have been good against Corruptors, but that's not what we're seeing here. Here comes the big attack on in here by ByuL.
The Void Rays are definitely helping out against the Banelings, and a Stasis Ward will actually trap a few of these Banelings in here. Just microing back now into those pylon overcharges here. Carriers actually losing most of their interceptors though. There's only 3 on the map, so it doesn't matter if you have 4 carriers if they can't launch interceptors. And this is just so many Hydras. This Protoss army is being pushed back here. This is so efficient for ByuL, who can just remax in Hydras. Whereas Sats, on the other hand, is very expensive for him, and even making interceptors cost money. Lings are trickling through now as he micros the carriers back. 7 Hydras in production currently. The attack upgrades for the carriers, though, definitely helping them hold their own here. He's going to have to back off now, however, and this base may just have to be given up.
Looks like it. He's totally pulled everything. All the probes moving back, too. ByuL will successfully find this timing here and stop the attack. Stats actually coming on in, though, once again with the interceptors. It looks like he wants to back off, perhaps regroup. And actually, ByuL doesn't commit to taking out that fourth. He just wants to make sure that he doesn't lose his Hydras, because I'm glad you mentioned the interceptors, because that was really key. Because for half that fight, there were no interceptors, and it was basically just Void Rays versus a bunch of Hydras. And even though it looked like the Hydra number was getting really small, there wasn't much to fight against them. Even though there were 4 gigantic carriers in the sky, they weren't really doing any attack damage. So pretty good trade there for ByuL.
Exactly, because he has the 5th base I was talking about. He's mining purely minerals from it right now, but he can add gases soon. And he's just making Hydras versus expensive carriers. But now, because the carriers lived and he only killed the interceptors, Sats not only kept his 4th base alive, but now 4 carriers became 6. And he has the interceptor count back up where he'd like it to be. Changeling's just chilling on the main base. But this is a lot of Banes. This is a larger Zerg army than it was last time, and he may just be able to burst through. Already baiting out the stasis wards here, does not want to get caught. That's what he's sending these things for. Now confident that there's none nearby. He's going to get a big arc here, waiting for that overcharge to fade away before he commits into the fight now. A lot of Archons actually hanging around on the bottom, soaking up those Baneling shots.
Yeah, the Archon's really doing work this time. Still a good composition here of Hydras, but will it be enough this time? This time there's not as many Hydras, but more carriers and Protoss units on the ground, but still not a terrible trade here for ByuL.
Mostly interceptors going down, and ByuL's going to have to back off. But he didn't kill the carriers. There's 7 still out there. The interceptors will now be remade very quickly, faster than the Hydras can be remade, and for a cheaper cost. Yeah. I think the big issue for ByuL in this fight was that his Banelings hit mostly those 2 Archons to the south, so the Adepts actually really helped out in the fight this time more than they did last time. He's actually going to warp in a few High Templar now. He didn't actually use Storm in the last fight. I'm pretty sure it did finish, though, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he does have Psy Storm. He just didn't want to keep those Templar because the attack happened before they had enough energy. He made them into an Archon instead. He's actually doing it once more here. Yeah. And if ByuL's going to run his Banelings into those set Archons, then it might even be more effective than the Storms themselves.
We keep looking at this lair, and as you were mentioning before, you know, where are the Vipers? The Vipers are pretty huge in this fight. If you can just yank the mothership and then get to town on those carriers, you know, yank a couple, well, you're going to be winning the fight really, really well. But ByuL, I said he was doing okay, but really he's running into a brick wall, and he's running out of time because he's not teching. He's only making Hydra Ling Bane. And he's trying to end the game here. He wants to win a fight at this 4th base of the Protoss, but as you said before, I mean, the carrier count keeps increasing. It's still at 7. Now he has Storm and a bunch of Adepts even on the ground. This is going to be hard for ByuL.
Speaking of Storm, he's about to have 10 carriers too. Storm's coming in. Decent split though. The Hydras to the north getting so much damage on the interceptors. Look at the interceptor count plummet here as the Hydras come in. There's actually still a few Banelings left as well in this fight. There's no ground army here for Stats. Here comes another warp, and the Banelings heading over there immediately. He is going to hold this off once again. And if you look at the production tab, once again, it's just more and more Hydras. This is a more cost-efficient army for Stats when microed correctly. And Stats is actually in a position now where he's looking to take a 5th base. Just like Stasis Ward added there in the mineral line just to stop more units from coming over and doing damage. I think the lack of tech here for ByuL maybe what was written on his tombstone after this game, because I just don't see this working again anymore with 10 carriers now.
He needs to attack right away because he needs to make sure he's not going up against Storm and 10 carriers, because 4 more High Templar were made, but if he hits before the Storm is ready, perhaps he's got a chance. But I think if he waits any longer, he's going to just lose this game, as you were talking about. Still hasn't been able to take out any of these carriers. 10 more are still alive.
This is going to have to be his moment. Banelings rolling in from behind. The Storms here actually connecting on all the Banelings. Very few hits on the Adepts here. As they move forward, another Storm comes down onto the Hydras. And I think this attack will just be held this time. There are still 27 interceptors on the map. Archons totally unchallenged. Even the Mothership Core is going to move forward. And I think we're going to a game 3. GG. Stats just held too well there. I feel like the first attack was the one that was destined to succeed for ByuL, but the Archon hits on the Banelings too good. The second attack he traded even once more, but he didn't have the tech, and he was kind of bleeding units into this Protoss army over and over again. And in fact, he could have teched the Vipers, held onto his 5th base, took more defensive engagements, forced Stats to move away from his very defensive position with Photon Cannons, Photon Overcharge, Psystorm defensively, taken Vipers, and just continued to prevent that 5th base from being taken by Stats. Stats never even took that 5th base. He never needed to, because he knew, okay, if you just run this Hydra army into my insanely defensive setup that's getting better and better each time, I have Storm now, I've reset up my cannons. If you just keep crashing into this and never tech, I don't need that 5th, I'm just going to win. You're going to have to type out after your attack fails the 3rd time.
Yeah, and maybe some of what ByuL's decisions were made on was that he took his 4th base a bit later and he's like, okay, I've got this one push going, and if it doesn't work out, it's going to be hard for me to transition because the Protoss is just going to have this insane army of carriers. Either way, guys, we are going into set number 3. It's going to be New Kirk Precinct. This will decide once again if ByuL will secure his spot in the playoffs, or will Stats look to end that and get a higher spot than even ByuL. Let's jump into game number 3 right now. Here we go. Once again, the map that decides everything. New Kirk Precinct. Down here in the bottom left, it's Stats, the yellow Protoss.
And down here at the bottom right in purple, Zerg player ByuL taking the first map. A very defensive setup there against Stats' timing attacks, but in game 2, scouted the carrier attack late, decided to try to smash it at the 4th base, but did not succeed.
Yeah, very, very interesting, and it's also something to note that when you get into these games, you notice that I don't think either of us are expecting any kind of cheese or weird play. Both of these guys, especially in this matchup, I feel like they play very, very straightforward, and especially in a best of 3, they're very confident in their ability to win a macro game, so they're just like, gentleman's agreement, you know? Go ahead and drop down that hatch first, double drone into gas, and then finally that spawning pool, and Stats will most likely take a you know, equal kind of macro approach.
Yeah, and I mean, let's see what happens this time if Stats goes into something completely different, because this is the fastest distance by air, so Stargate Tech is actually the strongest here. Is he going to continue to use that? Or is he going to go into an Adept style or an Archon drop, for example? Because for both the first 2 games, he's just committed to the Oracle Tech in a 3rd base. Different follow-ups. The first game, a very aggressive timing attack with the Warp Prism, and then the second game, just teching immediately to carriers. The opening has been identical, with the one exception of making an additional Oracle in game 2. ByuL is looking to scout this immediately. Already has his Overlords coming across the map. It's going to be very difficult for Stats to actually hide this. They'll take 2 shots to kill that probe, so he'll be all right.
ByuL was looking for it, but didn't get it. Unfortunately, we've been seeing a lot of different surrounds and pretty crazy micro strats in early games here at SSL, in both Challenge and Premier. It's pretty cool to watch that. Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe this is the game where, like Overgrowth, Stats takes more of an aggressive approach and tries to just attack a 3rd base. It's definitely a viable strategy. He doesn't exactly have to go into those carriers. I think this map is definitely one of those where you can go for early game pressure, but also can decide to go into some pretty late game ridiculousness with all the carriers, because the 3rd base is decently easily defended, but at the same time, you know, your opponent can get over there very, very fast, especially if you are making Adepts as the Protoss. So curious to see what kind of style he goes for, but he is going for the Stargate opening once again, as we have seen in all 3 games.
That's going to be the play. See if he commits to 2 Oracles once again. There's a decent amount of distance behind the mineral line, but not a lot of dead airspace to hide and continue to come in, so I feel like this Oracle Harass is going to be at its strongest the first time, and then it's going to get weaker and weaker. It's going to be hard to find angles. There's the potential that he could get between the natural and the third base and find some damage there. But going to go into the second and third gateway just like the first two games. This is exactly identical so far. We'll probably see a Void Ray once he wants to transition out of the Oracles, and that third Nexus will come up at the, I guess you call it the 10 o'clock expansion. So, Stalker to deny Overlord scouting so far. And he's going to see the Oracle regardless. Can't stop that. And this one got the main base anyways. Overlord speed committed to completely this time. 2 spores already on the way, 2 more queens about to pop out. It's going to be all about the micro here. Second Oracle is committed to.
He's got that queen in a really nice spot. You notice that he actually could have kept it on the left side, but actually 3 queens over here on the right, and so that Oracle takes a bunch of damage. Did he even kill 1 drone?
He got just the 1.
Yeah, just 1. So second Oracle coming out, but already a pretty nice defense so far by ByuL. Yeah, other than the fact that he's pretty heavily supply blocked here.
The third spore is going to be ready as well at the third base, sending the exact same Oracle pressure out on the map, and actually gets quite a few here, including the larva.
ByuL saw that one late. He wasn't looking at that time.
So the third Nexus is going to come up here now. This is just feels like a recipe he's following right now. Ooh, is he going to see this one? He does. Going to trigger with 1 drone. Oh, just barely gets the second one in there as well. Just on max range. And right now, ByuL is trying to figure out what's the follow-up. What's your plan with the third base this time?
Yeah.
Ooh, nice catch on these Adepts. Looks like probably 3 will escape. Just 2.
Nice catch. For sure, and yeah, I like that you point that out. I think the Overlord speed this time is so that he gets the information a lot quicker. He's like, okay, I need to know this. If he's going carriers, I need to play more greedy. If he's not, I need to prepare a little bit better. And more stasis wordplay over here. This Ling pressure did absolutely 0, as Stats was really nicely prepared for that. And this time for Stats, he is going into the Robotics and the Forge and the Twilight Council, so perhaps we will see more ground-based play.
Yeah, it looks like just a later game strategy in general. No timing attack coming out here. Hydrogen is coming up, mainly speed. Getting the safety tech right now is ByuL. Third base is pretty heavily droned up, but Stats has made more probes this time. He's committed completely his chrono energy to his next size, so he's actually just a few workers behind, which is natural in this matchup. Starts the +1. We'll see if he adds a robotic support bay here. It's actually going to be Charge first that he researches, not the Glaives.
Did he misclick? I don't know.
I doubt it.
Glaives is so popular just in general for Protosses nowadays that seeing anything else is kind of funny.
Look at the Templar Archive. It almost feels like maybe this is a Charge Zealot Archon timing attack. He has you know, all the gas is taken at all 3 bases, so he's going to have a lot of money to make the Archons, and it's a cool way to just spend all your money with a insanely powerful unit comp as 4 more drones get killed here. Spend all your money on, all your minerals on Zealots, all your gas on the Archons. And
I was poking a little bit of fun, but definitely something we haven't seen in a bit here, and we'll see how that works out. I think the robotics facility, actually he's making a second one, so we already have one, but he's making another, so it might just be, you know, Zealot Archon, maybe some Immortals added on in.
I suppose that this Charge Zealot, or rather the Charge upgrade, is going to be for just Harass then. He's going to go into the Storm. I can't imagine this is a misclick. There's just no such thing as a Charge Zealot Storm timing with double Robo. And in the past, when we'd see Charge and the Templar Archive coming up, it would usually just be Charge Zealot Archon for a big attack, usually an all-in. But in this case, it feels like it's more like he just wants to have the upgrade in general to harass while he goes for this late game. He wants to take that 4th base. I was talking about the 10 o'clock, and then add Immortals in from the Robo. So he's not making any Adepts either. So this, you know, I think just kind of further reinforcing the idea this is just going to be for Warp Prism harass. He is super turtling up as well. Look at this, adding so many photon cannons and stasis wards.
So many stasis wards, already 3. You just don't see this all too often. Thankfully, ByuL is really, he's read into that very, very well. Perhaps he's played against this, you know, a lot on the ladder at the higher levels. He's like, okay, I just need to get rid of these stasis wards if I ever want to go for an attack. We do see him actually finishing up +2 melee, and he does make a ton of Lings already out on the map, as well as these Hydras. So maybe he wants to hit a timing here with Ling, Bane, Hydra.
Well, definitely is hiding a bunch of Banelings there. They were all spotted. He's going to move them back and reproduce them anyways. So yeah, it looks like that's what he wants to do. Feels like Stats is almost countering what ByuL is doing, though. He's making the Immortals. He's got a bunch of high tap already for Storm. He's setting up all these cannons and pylon walls. I think he's read into what ByuL has planned here. And I'm not really sure if ByuL should attack, and he scouted several times. I think he's starting to realize that maybe this isn't such a good idea after all to commit to the attack. I mean, the counter tenfold is the answer that Stats has built. He has the exact answer to this. I'm going to start this base now. Is that a hatch? Is he just building a hatchery right there? Yep. Okay, no. It looked like it on the mini-map, but it's just a square. I was like, no way he's building a hatch there. He's just got all of his units right here.
Oh, yeah.
Stasis Ward already triggered here. He's going up. He wants that 5th base. He's going to split these units in half. But this actually could be a liability for ByuL. Does go back and re-engage. Again, a Stasis Ward trapped several Banelings here.
And really good Storms on the left side of that army. He hasn't hit the core of the Banelings on the right side, though. Questionable if this is enough units, though, as Stats actually goes ahead and supply for just a bit there. The Archon's doing a really nice amount of damage to the Banelings, and a really good Storm there on the Banelings, too.
And now the Banelings starting to fade away. Charge Zealots coming in to soak up the rest. And that is going to be a solid hold here. He now has the 5th base coming up. ByuL, on the other hand, has his own 5th coming a little bit later. And now he's got Charge Zealots for Harass. Doesn't look like he's interested in making Adepts at all at this point in time. Just wants Storm and Archons. This is very cool what we're seeing. A few Adepts coming in here. Not going to be very effective. I think he's going to switch into Charge Zealot in a minute when he wants to actually commit to Warp Ends with all the extra money he has. Void Ray already in position here. This is so frustrating for ByuL. He can't find any angle here.
Yeah, that attack was doomed to fail, as we were talking about, just with the amount of setting up and turtling that Stats did. The delay on his 4th base. He's like, okay, I want this to go late game. I'm just not going to die. And so that's exactly what he did. He didn't die. And once again, ByuL is kind of stuck on this tech. He's going to go Ling, Bane, Hydra. And that's his only answer. But as we saw before in Game 2, if the very high-tech units don't die, what really is going to be your answer? Next time you're just going to be facing even more Storms, even more Archons.
Yeah, that's the exact issue here. With all these Stasis Wards set up too, it's so difficult to attack. Even if he tries to trigger them one by one, it's eventually just going to wear down his army. Storm's coming in here, and the Banelings don't even really connect that well on the Immortals. Now he's just kind of kiting back so many barriers to help protect this army as he waits for more Storms. I think he's got 3 available now. ByuL needs something more than just this Hydraless Force. I think he needs to tech up, but he doesn't want to. He only wants to play Hydra Baneling.
Yeah. If he was instead playing it a bit more passively and going into Broodlords, let's say, you know, what would be the tech that Stats has against Broodlords here? It's not going to be his 8 Immortals and 4 Archons, and definitely not the Charge Lots, but
yeah, I mean, I think
ByuL's just stuck on this forever.
Yeah, I think he's worried that, or about the Ultralisk transition, and the Broodlords have some space to work with the rest of the main base, but it's a very open map in terms of attack, so I guess that's his idea. But if he could just hide the Broodlord tech, would have been better perhaps than this. He's going to try to take this big fight now. He's got a good angle on this army, trying to overwhelm the Frost. A lot of these barriers on cooldown now. Warpin coming in of Charged Zealots.
This is actually a pretty close fight after all. This was about the best position ByuL could have fought in, but at the end of it all, I think just taking the trades from earlier on that weren't so good, he will not have enough to kill Stats' army as Stats moves onto this 4th base. He wants blood. He wants to take ByuL out here in this push.
There's just not enough units here. He doesn't have any Storms, so maybe if he whittles down this Zealot army, picks off a few of these Immortals, eventually he could defend, but he's already lost a base here. And now Stats is just going to back off. He has a recall available too if things get really dirty.
Yeah.
He's actually just going to recall only his mothership core home. He's a little bit concerned about some potential counterattack, I suppose, but he's going to kite back here off creep. Maybe he loses an Immortal, but this is still a great position. He's going to leave a few Zealots to help this Immortal escape.
Still takes good trades, and now this should be the Zealot warp in that you were talking about. He might not even warp in, might just drop the 4 and leave it at that.
He just has so much bank to warp in Zealots and harass right now, and ByuL is bleeding units once again.
Yeah.
Now going to back off into this massive setup of photon cannons we were talking about before. Looks like he just wanted to recall that mothership home to make it into a mothership itself, not a mothership core, to evolve it.
We were talking about the potential for Broodlords if ByuL wanted to take a more late game kind of passive approach, but Stats was preparing for it. You know, he got that fleet beacon for the mothership, but also he had the available tech if he absolutely needed to go into Tempest later on to deal with the Broodlords. So, I mean, I love the way that Stats played it, this very passive style. It feels like he read the way that ByuL wanted to play, his more aggressive kind of Lingbane Hydra style, and he's countering it straight up. It's working really, really well.
In terms of leading the games and, you know, making the plays, I feel like this meta and the mind games of this best of 3 were completely controlled by Stats. He showed 3 unique transitions from the same opener on 3 different maps in this best of 3, well prepared, and this game is nearly over now as he has a mothership, he has +1 shields coming out, he's already heavily upgraded this ground army, and he's just going to pick off these hatcheries over and over and over again, and ByuL just does not have enough units to contest. This is probably going to be the last fight. Storm's coming down, he just wants to keep the Zealots out until the Banelings are gone, and then he's going to send them in. GG, Stats will take the series 2-1, preventing ByuL from going directly to playoffs here this evening.
Yeah, definitely wanted to take that win, as you were saying, to secure his playoff berth, but who's next? Asks Stats as he takes 1 match against all 3 races. And, I mean, as I said in the beginning, this guy, he's been looking better against Zerg than ByuL has been against Protoss. Perhaps this is one of ByuL's weaker matchups. He looked fantastic against Terran, even though he did lose against Innovation. But that's actually a couple of losses in a row now for ByuL, who is looking very, very strong coming into this match. But a hard-fought one. And I would have to agree with you. I really like the way that Stats played it. His kind of just making the match his and just reading it and forcing ByuL to adapt to his style, but really liked it.
I mean, I feel like ByuL just showed a difficulty to adapt, which has always been his weakness in this matchup. In the mid-game, he just fails to transition oftentimes into that late-game tech. Seems very lair-focused right now. Stats almost blind counted him with the defensive setup there. Couldn't break through, didn't want to transition. Stats had his number there, and once he started to fail with the Hydras, there was no transition to Hydra. Stats would have rolled him if he stopped making Hydras, so it was a kind of stuck from there. But we're going to jump into our next match, Maru versus Patience, after a very short commercial break. See you guys in just a few minutes.